Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful start to your week, that you're staying safe and that you're staying loaded for good rates, of course. So over the past week, a few notable things have been happening in this industry, from more bankruptcies, more layoffs, and then we have the news that the FMCSA might be letting carriers down. So let's go ahead and chat about the latest developments. Ready? Let's go! All right, let's start with the news from the FMCSA, as this one was pretty frustrating. The article came out yesterday by Overdrive. As many of you know, carriers have been fighting for broker transparency in order to avoid the price gouging that sometimes happens in this market. Now, recently, Ken Adamo, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he's the chief of analytics at DAT. He performed a study on broker gross margins, and according to the study, he obtained the data from certified DAT customers, not through load postings. Now, what he found was that on average, across all equipment types, the average broker margin percentage was at 13.47%. Now, when he looked by equipment type, again, these are averages, he saw that flatbed had the highest margin of 15.14%, followed by reefer at 13.82%, and then dry van at 13.01%. Now, he also found that the highest margins are earned by brokers who have loads coming out of the Northeast, Florida, Texas, and Colorado. I'm attaching everything down below if you guys are interested in reading through this study and through all the articles that I'm going to be mentioning in this video. The issue with this report, according to the NOOA, and I quote, lies in the fact that the sample represents only 20% of DAT's total broker contribution volume for 2023. Another thing to note is that we're talking about average margins here, and Overdrive does a great job at linking brokers who boast about taking way bigger margins than that. So there's a Reddit thread titled "The Fattest Rip," and the first comment there is, I quote, "I think this thread is really bad for the brand. We know it happens. Nobody else needs to know, though." One guy in the thread said that he had a $12,000 load and he made $8,000 on it, which means he sold it to the carrier for $4,000. Now, of course, then I started digging and I started finding that brokers are aiming for 30% margins. One guy was boasting about how he made 32% on a load. One guy was saying how his average for the year was at 28%. So yeah, of course, carriers are fighting for broker transparency to have more money in their pockets. And one thing that everyone was more or less hopeful about is the fact that the FMCSA was supposed to rule on broker transparency in October of this year. Well, not so fast. So according to the article by Overdrive that came out yesterday, I quote, "The Department of Transportation released an updated significant rulemaking report signifying potential publication dates for rulemakings by DOT agencies, and notably absent from the new report is a rulemaking on brokered freight transaction transparency from the FMCSA, which has been included in the previous report." Now, the OOIDA is not very concerned about the fact that this is missing from the new report, because they say it's not unusual for some proposals to be missing. But nevertheless, it's something that is bothering carriers, because now we're kind of in the dark again. Is this going to happen? Did they brush it off? I guess we're only going to find out in the next few months or so. Whatever the case may be with broker margins, something that is abundantly clear is that many people, and it doesn't have to be just trucking companies, just any player in the trucking industry is still struggling. My goodness, over the past week, there have been so many articles about bankruptcies, layoffs, companies having to shut down their doors. Now, according to FreightWaves, Jumbo Beverages, a beverage distributor who serviced over 20 suppliers across 22 counties in North Texas, announced a permanent layoff of all employees at its beverage distribution center in Grapevine, Texas, and this will affect 109 workers. Now, digital freight forwarder Flexport, I quote, is considering a workforce reduction of approximately 20%, affecting close to 500 employees. And this according to FreightWaves, comes after over 600 employees were laid off last year. Then we have a trucking company, JJT Transport, which is Texas-based. They just filed for bankruptcy. Why? I'm not sure, but we know that they filed for bankruptcy 4 days before a wrongful death civil trial filed by the family of one of its former drivers who drowned in 2016. And again, these are just companies we read about. How many small brokerages, carriers, shippers, receivers are shutting their doors and nobody knows about it? The reason we talk about bankruptcies and all of that is not to feel good about how we are surviving while other people are not. No. It's because we have to remember that this industry is extremely interconnected. And when one player falls, it's not just that player that gets affected, right? It might affect 100 of other people as well. The best example of this is, of course, Convoy. When Convoy shut down, it didn't just affect the people who were working at the company. It affected thousands of carriers, unless they had non-recourse factoring, who simply did not get paid for the job that they performed, because once Convoy shut down, there was really not much they could do. So it's an interesting catch-22 type of situation. On one hand, some carriers feel like it's karmic justice in a way when a broker is struggling, right? But on the other hand, brokers have control over a pretty big portion of the loads available, which means that a lot of carriers do depend on brokers and how they are doing. And when they go under, carriers don't get paid. Anyway, I'm babbling at this point, wishing you all a fantastic week ahead, and I'll see you in the next video.